Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 91 of the PE Geek Podcast, and as always it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Now if you're tuning in, I really do appreciate it, and I've want to announce that we've just released the brand new update to the PE Geek mobile app. Now as a podcast listener, you probably listen to this podcast through your podcast player of choice, whether that's Stitcher or whether that's Apple Podcasts or any of those other podcast platforms. But we've now gone and made the podcast player inside the PE Geek app even better. It's able to save episodes offline, and it keeps all of our content inside the one place. So when we mention links and so on inside of the podcast, they're all there underneath the podcast player, and it just makes it a better experience. You can also do a whole host of other things inside the app, like catch the webinars and all the other on-demand material, and it just makes it all the more better to access. So you can head to either the Google Play Store or the Apple iTunes Store and search the PE Geek, and you'll be able to find the latest update. If you do have the old version, then you probably have gone and updated it and maybe haven't logged in to see how it's changed, but I certainly recommend going and checking it out. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be diving into a bit of a follow-up from the previous, which was all about virtual reality in physical education and, I guess, in general education. But in this episode, we're going to look at the other technology that happens to be usually spoken about in the same breath, and that is augmented reality. And we'll talk about what the difference is between the two, and we'll talk about some of the things that you can do right now with augmented reality in your classroom, and then what the implications for that might be in the years to come. Now, last episode, we spoke about virtual reality and what it meant. And essentially, virtual reality is a way in which that you can create a virtual world almost and be able to enter into that virtual world and experience it. Now, to compare that to augmented reality, essentially augmented reality takes your real world, so the world that you're in right now, and overlays information from the digital world on top of it, so that you end up with this hybrid between the sort of virtual world stuff. They might be characters or avatars or different things happening in the virtual world, and they're laid into the real world. So in a nutshell, augmented reality enhances the real world, whereas virtual reality takes you to a whole new world. They're two really different fundamental technologies, but they've both got huge implications. And augmented reality is probably the one that is going to have the most impact when it comes to solving problems and different world challenges that we have as a utility tool, in the same way that mobile devices have got to the point where we use them all the time for different day-to-day tasks. Augmented reality is going to have that mass widespread adoption, but virtual reality is going to have a huge booming industry of entertainment and education that is fully immersive, as opposed to augmented reality is sort of layering the information over the existing world. Now, I think it's great that we've got both of these situations and both of these similar technologies that are all happening to mature in tandem. You know, many years ago, augmented reality has been around for, but it's been very basic and very, very limited in what you can do with it. But in the same way that virtual reality is maturing, so too is augmented reality. And we're getting the early impacts of that ripple through education and ripple through life, and I think that's really exciting. Now, I mean, the very first experience I personally ever had with augmented reality was when I first got my iPhone, and one of the very first apps I ever used was this app called StarWalk. Now, it's got nothing to do with phys ed, but StarWalk lets you quite literally look through your phone as you stand in the sky, and you can see and look around and look at the basic stars in the solar system. So as you look through your phone and glance over towards where the moon is, your phone shows you that you're looking at the moon, and you are also looking at the moon in the real world. So it's layering over that real world information with the digital information, and it meant that I could use that to explore the solar system. You know, I couldn't see Jupiter, but I knew that looking through the app, I could actually see Jupiter and interact with it and know that it's off in the distance. So it was really cool. So that was the very first augmented reality experience I had, and there's been quite a few that have appeared that are very similar over the years since, that have sort of been preludes to where this stuff is headed. And you may remember in the years gone by, and even on this podcast and in the PE Geek workshops, I've spoken a lot about the Anatomy 4D application. And Anatomy 4D is incredible. Unfortunately, it's no longer available on the iOS platform, but it is available on Android at the time of this recording going live. And Anatomy 4D lets you take a photocopied piece of paper that the app gives you, and you simply use the Anatomy 4D app and point it at that piece of paper, and it would bring to life an immersive anatomy experience that you could interact with on your screen, and depending on where you were standing and how you moved, the animation inside the app also moved as well. And every time I've ever showed this to people, they've been blown away by the experience. But as you know, we're likely to talk about at the end of this episode, this is just the starting point for what this technology is going to provide for us. So at this time, you can still go and get Anatomy 4D and download that for Android devices. And if you did happen to download it for the iOS platform beforehand, it's still there. It still works. But I'm guessing, are getting ready for the upcoming iOS 11 release, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because it has huge implications for augmented reality. Now, last year, something very big happened, and it has, in many reasons, been one of the catalysts for why augmented reality is starting to become really popular. And you probably remember me talking about it potentially, and you probably remembered seeing people do this thing. And maybe you participated, maybe you just witnessed people doing it. But the thing I'm talking about is Pokemon Go. Now, Pokemon Go was an absolute global phenomena, unlike anything that I've seen in recent years in the mobile app space. And, you know, it was phenomenal. And if you can say all you like about what it meant and whether you think it's a good thing, but the fact that people were out and about and exploring and, you know, being active, I think it is a good thing. And the best part about it, and the thing that got me the most excited when I saw this come out, wasn't Pokemon Go. It was the technology that was underlying this particular tool. And that was augmented reality as well. So if you've never played it, basically Pokemon Go is a game. It's almost like a treasure hunting game, and you open up the app and it shows you where Pokemon are in the real world. Now, Pokemon is like a little animated character that is wildly popular in in many years. So it had a lot of take up from even adult populations. But the idea was you would go and hunt them down, and then when you found one, it would appear in your real world. And the only way you would see it is by looking through your device, and you look through your device and you can see that creature, whatever it was in your living room or in the local park. And then you would catch that Pokemon, and then you would continue on and hunt for the next one. And obviously that augmented reality experience got a lot of attention, and it got a lot of people talking about augmented reality and a lot of people interested in it. And, you know, it's led to the path that we're currently on, which I'm incredibly excited about. And that is seeing a lot of people start to build these augmented reality experiences into their apps. Now, the best I've seen in recent years, by far, in a PE context, is the app Virtuali-tee. And I'll put a link to the show notes at thepegeek.com/91. And it's by a team called Curoscope. And essentially what this app does is it lets you, almost like 4D anatomy, have an interactive anatomy experience. But rather than looking at a piece of paper to trigger it, you actually have a Curoscope t-shirt that you wear. And you put the t-shirt on, and then your users or your students or whoever they are look through the device. They see the animation come to life, and it looks like it's your body because it's overlaying the animation of looking through into your internal organs over the t-shirt, and you looking through the device just see the internal organs. So really amazing. Now, when I demoed this to people in a live workshop, they were just blown away because they had the opportunity to see this thing in real life and experience it, and they could just immediately connect how this would be beneficial in a teaching environment if you were teaching things like anatomy. But it really is the starting point. We've got to a point now where that's possible, and sounds super complex, but really the tools are there for us to be able to, or for developers to be able to do this quite easily. And no greater example is present than the upcoming release of the iOS 11, which is about to come out very soon. And if you're an Apple user, you automatically get it because it's just an update on your phone. And when that update takes place, it's going to have a thing in it called ARKit. And ARKit is a revolutionary developer tool that all developers can now leverage to be able to enable them to build augmented reality experiences really, really seamlessly. And the developers have been playing around with ARKit for about 5 months or so already. It's been quite some time out, and people are already building things that are leveraging augmented reality experiences. And what we're seeing is just this complete change in what's going to be possible. And to give you a couple of examples, and if you go and have a look for ARKit, I'll link to this in the show notes too. You can see some of the projects that people are already working on. And one of the best ones that I saw, which I thought was just mind-blowing, was a tape measure. Now, a tape measure doesn't sound like any sort of rocket science technology, but if you can imagine that your phone could be used as a tape measure in any situation and it would have accuracy like a real tape measure, how cool would that be? Now, essentially what the app lets you do with augmented reality is look through your phone and measure real-world objects using a tape measure that lives inside your phone and uses augmented reality to make that happen. Incredible. So essentially anything could be measured by simply looking through and starting to measure by dragging your phone from left to right or whatever you're doing, up and down, and the tape measure moves out like a real tape measure, and you get to measure the real world thing to actual 100% accuracy, which is mind-blowing. And that is now going to be the norm of many of the apps that we use. We're going to have augmented reality features inside them. The next one that I saw that we use all the time is mapping, and augmented reality with mapping. What does that look like? Well, one of the developers has built the Google Maps so that you can be navigating. Let's say you're walking down the street and you need to know where to turn and what to do. Well, they've combined the mapping aspect with street signs. But rather than having street signs that are actual physically in the world, the street signs are based on where you want to go. So if you put into your phone that you need the directions from this place to the nearest coffee shop, well, the app will bring up virtual street signs and arrows, and as you walk through down the street towards the coffee shop, it's telling you when to turn by showing you actual street signs and arrows pointing in the direction of which corners you need to take, and so on. And that is phenomenal. This idea of layering over the real world and the digital world so that we can get the benefit of both of those. And it's going to be an absolute game changer. As soon as iOS 11 comes out, we're going to start to see all of these things roll into our classrooms and into the PE space and into education and just into general day life. And it'll be a couple of years' time and we'll look back and think, how do we ever live without having this augmented reality experience that is now the norm for whatever it is that it replaces. Now, as you sit here now, you might be thinking, oh, cool, this episode's great, Jared, but there's not a lot in here about things that we can do now already. Well, that's not true. If you go to thepegeek.com/QR code, you can see a webinar that I ran last year, and you can register for it and watch it. And in it, I dedicate half of the episode or half of the webinar to looking at augmented reality things that you can do right now. Most of them are very simple, and they involve placing a model of some sort over a real world item, but there are some more complex ones. And one of the things I shared that many of you could get the benefit from is an app called Aurasma. It's been around for a long time. It's an augmented reality experience generating tool that you can use to build your own augmented reality application style stuff. And once you sign up and you register, you can log in and you can create what's called a trigger item. And that trigger item, when triggered in the app, can produce a response. It's almost like a QR code in a way, but the trigger item doesn't have to be a QR code. It could be a basketball. So you could have a basketball sitting in your gymnasium, and with the Aurasma app, you simply hover over the basketball or look at the basketball with the Aurasma app, and the Aurasma app starts playing a video of how to use that basketball, or it plays a video of a coach, or it takes you to a web page that shows a list of activities that you could do with that basketball. So Aurasma is there now. It's been around for a long time. You can use it to craft some pretty cool experiences, and there's quite a few other tools that do very similar things in the augmented reality space. Another one being Layar, Layar. You can test these out, and you can use some of the free components of those, or you can upgrade to get the paid features. But the real reason I wanted to do this episode was to prelude what's coming. And the what's coming isn't, hey, 5 years time from now we're going to be able to use augmented reality. It is almost here. As soon as that iOS 11 update rolls out, every single smartphone that has Apple software is going to be a platform for augmented reality. And when you've got that many people with augmented reality capable devices, it is a huge motivator for people to build really cool stuff. And we're going to start to see it. So keep an eye out for upcoming episodes and upcoming blog posts as we discover these augmented reality tools that are going to absolutely impact the classroom in big ways. So hopefully you found this interesting. You can go and explore some of the stuff already. Head over to thepegeek.com/91 and you'll get a list of the links as well as any other information that was mentioned and a full word-for-word transcript of today's episode. I also want to remind you of the fact that the PE Geek app is now out as a brand new update. It's beautiful. If you haven't got it, go and get it, and you can listen to the episodes of the podcast inside there. It makes it even easier to take notes and sort of remember what was covered in each episode, because it's all in one place. Other than that, I look forward to returning in episode 92 with a brand new interview of another physical educator doing amazing things. I look forward to speaking soon. Bye.